Nothing attracts hustlers quite like a treasure hunt. X marks the spot here in Johannesburg, where hundreds of mines and tailing piles scar the landscape. Side effects of gold fever. In 1886, the world's largest gold basin was discovered here. Within 10 years, 100,000 were scratching out a living. Now, 10 million do, making it the largest city in South Africa and the richest on the continent. Most of the actual gold diggers have moved on. Doc is one of 50,000 still at it.
I was born here in Joburg. Unfortunately, my parents passed away, so I didn't have any support from anyone.
His crew is part of a larger gang that battles for control of abandoned mines. The diggers are exposed to toxic fumes that can kill.
We work gold because we don't have jobs. We are from South Africa. All of us here, we are from here.
Above ground, the tunneling creates dangerous open pits and is alarming residents.
You are hearing voices and chopping, like digging. So I said to them, digging underground. We're going to lay here in our houses, going to fall in under us till one day. Continuous blasting happens here.
This is how close this camp has moved into the neighborhood.
All cleaned up, Doc's take from yesterday's nugget is about $15. That's more than enough for some KFC for lunch.
What I got from KFC, I brought my wife sweet chili twister.
Another day at the office for one of Johannesburg's army of unregulated workers. You do what you have to do when the official unemployment rate is 37%. Of course, Joburg also has people living like this. Nowhere on Earth today are incomes between rich and poor more extreme. Residents of this suburban estate don't even have to leave the security of their walled compound to go shopping, get a haircut, hang at the clubhouse with their neighbors, take the kids to school, or even to go to the hospital. Most in Joburg live somewhere in between. They work hard, within the law, to get by. Tebogo Seso can't find a job in fashion design, the profession she went to school for, so she makes ends meet tutoring.
The lack of South Africa is so bad. Now you need a backup. My backup is teaching those street kids who come from school and they just want to play the whole day. Just take 2 hours, learn English. So I am making an extra living. We are growing the economy, but they are dropping it because of politics.
Her neighbor also channels disappointment into uplift, performing as a musician and a dancer while he awaits a chance to put his degrees to work.
I finished my postgrad in criminology 3 years ago now. And when I finished my undergrad, I was applying for jobs, nothing. It's been 3 years now. I'm unemployed. I'm blaming the country. We all know in South Africa who's running the country since 1994.
That would be the African National Congress, ANC, the party of Nelson Mandela. But before the ANC, the official policy of South Africa's white government was apartheid that kept blacks who overwhelmingly outnumbered them apart in every facet of life. A notable exception was working together at white-owned companies. Turns out the boss man could tolerate the races mixing after all, if it meant he profited.
There are many people who feel
Mandela was part of a group that plotted to overthrow this ridiculous system. And for 27 years he was kept in prison by the government. Finally, in 1990, with the apartheid system teetering, Mandela was released.
For 27 years, 6 months and 6 days, he had been a prisoner. During that time, he became a legend, a symbol of black resistance to apartheid, and to many, he became a martyr. Tonight, he is a free man.
There's Mr. Mandela, Mr. Nelson Mandela, a free man taking his first steps into a new South Africa.
He helped negotiate the end of apartheid, as well as the terms of South Africa's first free election, which he won to become president. And in the 30 years since, Mandela's long coattails have kept the ANC in charge. Unfortunately, the ANC's instinct has been to use its political dominance to hand out coveted government jobs and contracts to party members, many of whom are completely unqualified. This corruption has been going on for so long that the ANC now effectively controls the most vital sectors of South Africa's economy, a concept called state capture. Nowhere are the consequences of this vast and ongoing theft more apparent than Soweto. Originally intended to house 50,000, so many rural villagers have arrived and then had families that its population is now 1.2 million.
People living like this on a daily basis, man, every single day. They get born into situations like this. It's been over how many years now of democracy, but we're still finding ourselves in situations like this.
Dinner time on a Tuesday. Another blackout caused by corruption at the government-owned electricity supply commission called Eskom.
But now we have to rush everything. What takes priority is your homework and making sure that everybody eats. Make sure that by the time load shedding hits, everything is done.
During warm months, when hundreds of thousands of air conditioners call for power at the same time, Johannesburg's old, struggling electricity network can't meet demand, so Eskom implements rolling blackouts, known here as load shedding. Business at this salon suffers when the hairdryer and lights are sometimes off for 10 hours a day.
I used to have 2 employees, but I had to cut one and keep the other.
Economic growth is nearly impossible in these conditions. At least the weather's good. At nearly a mile high, the average temperature for the year is a pleasant 15.5 degrees C. It's about 59 Fahrenheit. Safari parks lie just through Joburg's lush landscape of trees that include jacaranda, whose blooms give the city a lavender haze each October. Impressively, they've been hand-planted over the years, transforming what was essentially a dry grassland plateau into one of the world's largest man-made urban greenscapes. The shade helps. Perched on the main continental plateau, well over a mile above sea level, the atmosphere is thinner, so UVs are stronger. A clue that the most valuable gold in Joburg may not be buried in the ground. Those who can afford to solve the energy crisis themselves.
Solar is the way to go because it will free our nation. Most of our nation is actually deprived of their basic human rights. And that's to be able to do work whenever, however, and for how long they want.
This rooftop solar installer is so busy, he can't keep up with calls.
People didn't have trust or confidence in Eskom's ability to solve the problem, so they started looking for alternatives.
Eskom used to be extremely reliable before the ANC converted it to a state-owned corporation in 1998. But now, after decades of corruption and mismanagement, tens of millions of productive hours are lost every day in Johannesburg and across South Africa during the worst blackouts. One of the main causes is that Eskom doesn't even secure its coal, the main fuel that generates 85% of its electricity.
So we're looking at a black site. This is where we figured out that most of the coal swaps happen.
Investigative journalist Mpumelelo Mashifana exposed how managers at Eskom allow criminals to steal good loads of energy-dense coal during transport by simply swapping it out for bad loads whose purity has been cut with rubble.
The bad coal ends up at Eskom and the good coal ends up somewhere else.
This scam alone costs the state utility 50 million euros a month. So in 2019, Andre de Ruyter was brought in as Eskom's CEO to clean things up. He underestimated how widespread the corruption and damage was.
But what I hadn't realized was that state capture was like a cancer throughout the entire body of the organization. Everywhere there is resistance to implementing controls, to conducting investigations, to implementing disciplinary action.
He urged numerous government officials to take action, but they did little. So last year he resigned and published an explosive tell-all.
We know of at least 4 organized crime cartels operating in Mpumalanga in Eskom. They are well organized. It's interesting that they've adopted the language of the mafia, and people get assassinated in Mpumalanga.
He was speaking from personal experience.
The story has taken an unprecedented turn in a shocking incident. It's alleged that the outgoing CEO of the power utility was poisoned just 2 days after he stepped down from his post.
Luckily, he survived the murder attempt. Journalist Kevin Bloom explained how deeply rooted the criminality is that De Ruyter went up against.
There's a pattern of racketeering activity that extends across the province, and that points to not just political interference from the highest levels, but political backing. Senior politicians who are making a mint out of these syndicates.
Now safely in the United States, De Ruyter keeps tabs on the situation back home.
The bigger networks, I don't think, have been properly investigated and pursued, and therefore my supposition is that the corruption continues by and large unabated.
De Ruyter says the average employee at Eskom is good, but there are too many opportunities for corrupt Eskom officials to award inflated contracts to their buddies without competitive bidding, extra costs that don't add any value to its business of delivering reliable electricity.
Those margins, I think, add significantly to the cost of electricity. They add to the cost of doing business in South Africa, but they also detract from being able to run an efficient business. If any business had to inflate its procurement bill by 20, 30, maybe more %, then you would be in a very challenged financial situation. And again, if you look across the board at our state-owned enterprises, this clearly seems to be the case.
Indeed, this culture of freeloading has plunged many of South Africa's most important companies deep into the red. When things get this bad in a democracy, there's always the ballot box.
With almost all results from this week's election now in, the African National Congress, the oldest liberation movement on the African continent, has lost its outright majority for the first time in 30 years, since the end of apartheid.
Despite all this, ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa was re-elected. Of the 27 million registered South Africans, only 35% showed up to vote against the ANC, which was able to hold control of the lower house of parliament and, therefore, the government. Perhaps it's time for politicians to offer a more focused, inspiring vision. Sounds pretty good to Fumani Thembi. Her company is one in a growing industry of independent renewable energy producers in South Africa.
What these renewable energy projects enable is the ability, firstly, to put power on the grid.
Wind and solar now supply 6% of the electricity produced across the country, enough to envision how they can transform more in the broken power sector.
We would have liked for it to not break, but it has broken, and that's an opportunity for us to redo, rethink, and do better going forward, to build not just South Africa's economy, but the African economy.
Thanks for dropping in on JoBurg with me.